Myself first. So you know who's presenting to you. My name's Janet Gallagher, and I'm one of the speech language pathologists at Sturgeon Public Schools. I'm going into my 16th year with Sturgeon, so I've been around for a while. And I think I've probably worked at all of the different schools in the division at some point over my time with Sturgeon. This current year, I'm at Landing Trail School, working with the pre-K kiddos and kindergarten kiddos this year. Yeah, so some of you, I may be your SLP, but you might be at one of the other schools or enrolled in one of the other programs, and then you would either have, let's see, Miss Stephanie would be at Bon Accord and Guthrie, Miss Desiree's at Ochre Park, and Legal and Camilla, and then Miss Melissa is at Warrenville Public. So if you do have questions following this presentation, you can either follow up with me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions, but then you can also go to your school SLP as well. So today we're going to be talking about language stimulation strategies. And so different strategies that we can use at home and during our daily routines to help our little ones start talking, or if they're talking already, add to their language. Because all of your kiddos are going to be kind of at different levels, the majority of these strategies can be kind of adapted to whatever language level your child is at. So like I said, maybe your child isn't using words at all yet. So ways to get them starting to making more sounds, using single words. Maybe your child's at the one word level, and so some of these strategies can be used to kind of bump them up to that 2-word level, or using more single words if they only have a few single words. And maybe your child is putting words together in 2- and 3-word phrases or sentences, and just ways to kind of expand that language and get them using different types of vocabulary words, or getting them to add something to their 2-word utterances. So now they're using 3-word utterances. So we can adapt these strategies to whatever language level your child is at. So there's quite a few different sections we're going to go over today. I'll stop at the end of each section, and if anyone has questions, you can put your questions into the chat box there, and I will try to address them. If you're not comfortable doing that, then like I said, you can reach out afterwards, and I would be more than happy to chat with you about any questions that you have. Or like I said, one of the other SLPs that works for Sturgeon as well. So I believe on the website, I had added 2 handouts. So we have this, it would look like this. And if you haven't printed it off or looked at it, that's okay. We're going to chat about it now. And you can always look at it afterwards just for reference. So this is the first one, and it's on language stimulation strategies. And then the second one is communication temptations, and it looks like this. And again, you can pull it off the website, or you can just peruse it on the website. So let's get started. It's really good to see, if I not even see your faces, but to see your initials. But yeah, it just warms my heart to be able to connect with you, and to be able to talk about speech and language and your little guys, because we've been missing that. So the first thing when we talk about kind of helping our little ones move along that language trail is building that relationship. So obviously you guys are the parents, so you most likely have a very good relationship with your children already. And that's key. That's key, that they know that they're safe and that they're special, and that they feel the most comfortable with you guys. So you guys are the #1 language teachers for your children. You spend the most time with them, and you know them better than anybody else, right? So your relationship is very powerful in developing your child's language skills and language growth over their first few years of life. So building that relationship is really, really key. And some kids are easier. Like some kids are very independent and they like to play off on their own, and they're quite happy to play on their own, and that maybe they don't want mommy and daddy involved, right? So sometimes it can be tricky to get in there when they are so independent, right? But we're going to talk about ways how you can do that and get into their communication bubble, right? So the first strategy after having built that relationship, which you guys have been doing since they were born, is really getting down to their level and following their lead. So sometimes we're like, it's busy life. I'm a parent as well, and I know what it's like in those early years when kids are so busy and go, and schedules are busy. But just allowing yourself the time to, and it doesn't have to be 24/7 because that's not realistic, right? But allowing yourself the time and the grace to get down to their level and play. So find your inner child, right? And get down there. So you want them to you want to get down on the floor with them so they can see your face. So you're at their level, right? So they can see your face, they can see your eyes, they can see your smile, they can see that you're interested in what they're doing. That's what they care about. They just want to know that they've got your attention. So yeah, getting down to their level or bringing them up to your level, right? So if you're sitting at the table, like bringing them up so that they can see you. Or if they're down on the floor, getting down there and playing with them so they can see your mouth, what your mouth is doing, how your mouth is moving for some of those speech sounds. So just like they just want to know that you're interested in what they're interested in. So the next one, once you're down to their level, is following their lead. So really taking the time to kind of sit back and see what they're actually interested in. Because kids they're like little sponges. They're going to soak everything up, soak up new vocabulary, soak up new expressions, if it's something that they're interested in. So a lot of times we as parents tend to be more the director of play. Let's do this, let's do that. And that's okay some of the time, but we just want to make sure we're not the director all of the time, right? So really, like, instead of us saying, oh, let's build a fire station with the blocks, like, let's just sit back and see what they want to do with the blocks. Maybe they're like building a tower, or maybe they're building a road. So instead of imposing our play ideas on them, we want to kind of follow their lead. So if they're building a road, then we take some blocks ourselves. Maybe they don't want us to be right in their space and using their blocks. So maybe we start to build a road on our own beside them. But if they're welcoming us to join them, then adding to their road, right? So just following their lead. It doesn't matter what it is, just kind of trying to let go of your idea of how things should be. Like, oh, blocks are used for this, or cars are used for this. Maybe they want to use them in a different way, and that's okay. So we're just going to follow their lead and join in when we can. Shay, and before I'm going to show a video and get Shay to share that video with us, which just kind of shows how you are your child's number one teacher, and how important that relationship is, and how important it is to kind of take the time to just play and follow their lead. I think Shay's going to share this. It might take a minute.
This one, right, Janet?
Yes, thank you.
It's an exciting time when you are waiting for your child to say her first words. You might be wondering if there's something you can do to help her learn to talk. And there is, because you are the key to your child's first words. Your child is learning language every day when the two of you spend time together. And research shows us that the more often you respond to your child and talk about his interests, the earlier you are likely to hear his first words. You know your child better than anyone else does. This means that you know what interests her and what she'll want to talk about. And because you spend time with your child every day, you have many opportunities for conversation. It really doesn't matter what you are doing together or what toy you are playing with. What matters are the interactions you have with your child and that you talk about whatever it is that's caught her attention. By having fun together, showing an interest in what your child is doing, and using words during these moments, your child will be well on his way to learning his first words.
Okay, so that's just a little video just to kind of show you that, you know what, it doesn't have to be like structured play by any means. It doesn't have to be with toys. You could see there that it was just during even like daily routines, like being outside and playing, going for a walk. I think in one of the little clips, the dad was doing laundry with the little one, and the little one was in the laundry basket. So really it is just that connection and getting down to their level so that they can see that you're excited about what they're excited about, and that you're interested in what they're interested in. That's super motivating for them to try and communicate with you. Now, the little ones in that video, they were a bit younger, and maybe you do have a little one that's like a junior pre-K kiddo that would be younger. But like I said, if they're older and they are saying words or saying, like, still following their lead and being interested in what they're interested in, they're going to just be more motivated to say more words, to do more gestures, to interact and take turns with you. So really that connection back and forth, it's just is super motivating for them and kind of the start of them wanting to communicate. And that's the key, is that internal motivation of wanting to communicate. That's what pushes us to try to say new words and try to say new phrases and try to get your attention. So yeah, so just knowing that you guys really are the most powerful ones when it comes to your child's language development. So now that we're like down on the floor, or we're bringing them up to us, whether we're lifting them up so they can see us, that getting to their level and following their lead, then another thing that's super hard for us as parents is waiting. Because we just internally want to meet our children's needs, right? That's just the way it is. And we're really good at meeting their needs. So sometimes we got to just try and take a step back and wait, because we often will jump in too fast, right? And give them what they need, give them the words, give them the ways of communicating, when really if we waited just even like 10 seconds, we would be amazed. I'm still amazed every time when I do this, just what they can come up with. Just when you think that they're not gonna respond or take a turn, or then at that last, the 11th hour, they come in and they are able to do something, right? So they're taking a turn in that interaction, which is so important. So that wait time, when we think about little kids and then giving them enough processing time or enough wait time to respond, they process much slower than adults do. So it is pretty typical for kids kind of in this preschool age to need at least 10 seconds to process what you've asked of them, or even them processing and thinking about what they want to say, and if they even want to try and say something or try and take a turn. But 10 seconds, I know it doesn't sound like a long time, but when you actually wait 10 seconds, it seems like an eternity. So say, I'm going to ask a question, but we're going to wait 10 seconds and just feel actually how uncomfortable that is. So if I asked you guys, say, what is your favorite snack? And we're going to wait 10 seconds, okay? So, and sometimes we call them elephants. One elephant. All right, that was 10 seconds or 10 elephants. And that seemed like a long time. And I don't know why it feels so uncomfortable, but it does. It seems awkward and uncomfortable. But our kiddos actually really need that time. And if we give them that amount of time, well, at least probably half of the time, they will try and respond, right? Whereas we're like, research shows that when an adult asks a question, we wait 2 to 3 seconds before we jump in and give them the answer, right? So we're like kind of cutting off any opportunity that they have to independently or with some support respond or communicate to us. So just really thinking about that when you ask your child to either to do something like follow a direction, or you ask them a question, really giving them that extra time, and you'll be amazed. You really will be amazed at what they'll come up with. And they might still need some more support. They might answer, or they might point, gesture, or they might answer, and then maybe you need to give them support to like say another word. Oh, I see some more people joining us. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We're just chatting about language stimulation strategies and how we can help build our kiddos' language, regardless of what level they're at, whether they're nonverbal, whether they're maybe just making sounds or using gestures, whether they're using single words, or whether they're putting words together in phrases. We can kind of adapt all of these strategies to meet the children where they're at. Yeah, so we're talking about waiting and just how important it is to give our kids enough wait time when we're asking them a question or asking them to do something, because kiddos need they can need up to at least 10 seconds to process what's being asked of them. And oftentimes we'll jump right in and answer for them like within 2 and 3 seconds. So just the importance of waiting so that they have an opportunity to think about what's being asked of them, kind of formulate what they want to say, and then actually say it, or use gestures, or however they're communicating. There is a video, actually. I'm going to get Shay to play that video for us. And it just kind of shows how wait time can allow a child to be able to respond. Yeah, so we'll get her to play that for us. It's an animated video, this one. We're giving Shay wait time.
Thank you, Janet. I'm just helping you demonstrate your concepts.
Thank you. Okay, guys. Yeah, so that's just showing, that it's hard to wait. As a parent, it's hard to wait, but it is definitely worth the while. giving your child that wait time, because you could see how that little boy would, like, it took a while for him to process exactly what he wanted to do and if he even wanted to try, right? So yeah, just the power of that waiting it's super beneficial when it comes to giving your child opportunities to try communicating, because they need practice, right? So the more opportunities they get in a day, the more practice they get and the more confident they get. Yeah, so just to recap for the newcomers or we were just talking about how important it is to have that relationship with your child, which as parents you do. But it can be tricky if they're more independent and they don't necessarily need you in their play. So just getting down to their level, so they can see you, see your face, see that you're interested and excited in what they're interested in, and following their lead. So how they want to play and what they're interested in, because they're more apt to soak up all the new words and soak up the fact that you're interested and excited in what they have to say or what they have to do. So that goes a long way with them, getting them to be more confident to even try to communicate. So the next, so we've done get down to their level, follow their lead, wait, that wait time. And then the next strategy is modeling simple language. So kids, when they're learning language, they don't have a lot of confidence at the beginning, right? So they might understand, like if you're asking them, oh, Johnny, let's go put our boots on, right? They might understand that long phrase, but they're probably never going to try and imitate it because it's beyond, it's beyond what their expressive capabilities are. So they might totally understand, and I work with lots of kids that, they totally understand what we're asking of them, but they're just not able to express themselves, right? So we really want to model simple language for them so that it is something that they're like, oh, well, I can try that, right? That's not too long. That's short enough. I can try and imitate that. I can try to say that. Yeah, so we kind of always look at, we call it the +1 rule. And this is all outlined on those handouts that are on the website. So you can refer to that afterwards. But the +1 rule is kind of, you always want to just up the ante by one thing. So if your child is, say, nonverbal, then we might be, modeling lots of gesturing for them, like in signs, like more, or pointing to something, or come. So if they're nonverbal, you might want to be modeling that kind of +1. We're adding in those gestures. If, say, your child is vocalizing and saying say like wee and vroom and making kind of environmental sounds like animal sounds like moo and oink oink or neigh, that kind of thing, then we want to up the ante by 1 by like doing some more single words, right? So like cow and pig and car. And say they're at the single word, they're saying lots of single words, then we want to be modeling lots of 2-word utterances. So if they're like car, then we might go car fast or car go. So modeling those 2 words. And again, it just keeps going on. If they're saying 2 words, then you want to model back 3 words, and not necessarily always say this, say that, like say car go, because that kind of puts them on the spot, right? And then it's not really fun. So it's way more effective to model that back to them. So if they're going car or whatever, and then you just modeling back, car go, and then you zoom the car across the floor. Or say you're playing, they love animals, you're playing with a farm set and there's cow, and they can say cow. Maybe we're putting the cow in the barn, cow in, cow out, cow up. So modeling lots of those 2 words. Again, if they're saying 2 words, you model 3 words back. If you're saying 3 words, you model 4 words back. When we look kind of developmentally, kind of 2-year-olds, you expect them to use single words and like 2-word utterances. When they're 3, we're kind of looking at 3 words, 3 to 4 word utterances. When they're 4, we're expecting them to be able to kind of say 4 to 5 word utterances. So wherever they're at, you're just going to add one thing, +1. And then also when we're talking about kind of modeling simple language, and there is, I mean, there also is, like, people will say, oh, well, that's not grammatically correct, right? So it is okay, instead of saying to add in some of those grammatical markers. It does expand the phrase a bit longer, but it is okay to model that sometimes, right? So if it's like, more juice. So more juice is not too bad, right? More juice, but you could say, I want more juice, but really emphasize the more juice part. So that's when we call it 4 S's. So when you're introducing new vocabulary, new words, new phrases, we want to, but keeping it simple. So the 4 S's, the first one is say less. So again, that is keeping it simple. So instead of saying, Johnny, do you want more juice? It would be want more juice. So keeping it, say less, want more juice, because they might get lost in the language, right? If it's too long. And especially if we're trying to get them to say some more things, we do really want to keep it simple. Stress is the next S. So the first one is say less. The second one is stress. So that just means, saying a little bit louder, using a little bit of different intonation in your voice, making it sound exciting. So, want more juice. So if you're trying to kind of focus on juice, want more juice, and you kind of raise your intonation at the end like it's a question. Or say he's saying car and you want to say car fast, or you could say car go fast. It's a little more grammatically correct, but if it's fast, you're kind of really wanting them to learn or know. You could say that a little bit louder, like go fast, or to drag it out a little bit, right? So it sounds exciting. And then slow. So some of us are really fast talkers, right? So we want to make sure when we're modeling language for our kiddos that we're using a slow kind of rate of speech. So it's not too fast, because we want them to be able to hear it. That we want them to be able to see how we're saying it. So just giving yourself that mental reminder that, okay, let's just slow it down a little bit. Okay. And then showing is that we do this all the time when we're teaching, when we're working with kids at school. But anytime that you can show them the item, like coffee. So you actually have the item and you're saying the word, you're pointing to it. You might have a picture, right? You might have pictures. We use core vocabulary boards in the classroom that just have some really, frequent and common vocabulary words. So like it might be yes and no and stop and more. So oftentimes when we're modeling language for the kids, we'll point to the picture. You might not have a vocabulary board at home, so you can just use the items, or when you're out and about, like just pointing to whatever you can, whatever you have a visual reference to, that can help them to learn what that word means. Because it's just more concrete, right? Like verbal words just disappear. But if you have something concrete to show them, then they make the connection. So yeah, so just remembering modeling that slow language, and then the +1 rule, and then saying it. Say less, so nice and short. Stress, change your voice, make it sound exciting. Slow, use a nice slow speaking rate, and then showing. So anytime that you can show them, either with gestures or with an item or with a picture, that can really help them to kind of incorporate those new vocabulary words into their repertoire. Yeah, so simple language, keep it simple. Just thinking about that, keep it simple. Let's see, the next one. So we've done follow their lead, get down to their level, wait time, model simple language. And the next one is repeat, repeat, repeat. So I don't know about you guys, but I need lots of repetition to learn new things. And that's basically how we learn. It's just things being repeated over and over and over again until we've incorporated them into our knowledge base, right? So yeah, repeat, repeat, repeat is something that we do all of the time. And when I'm talking with parents and say, if I send them home with like one strategy to do, it's like, okay, so we know to use simple language, but now let's just bombard them with that, right? So you're providing opportunities throughout the day to learn different words. So you can do this in different ways. You can, if maybe you're in a play interaction with them, and like I said, say it was the farm set, and you're down on the floor so they can see you, and you're playing with the sheep. So the sheep is there, and the sheep says "ba," right? So we're going to go sheep ba, sheep ba, sheep ba, or sheep in, sheep out, sheep up, sheep down, sheep here, sheep there, everywhere, right? So it might drive you crazy as a parent. And like I said, none of this can be done 24/7, right? So you have to pick your moments. But you think of those as just being very valuable moments. Maybe it's like for 10 minutes down on the floor after supper. Maybe it's 20 minutes when you're in the car driving somewhere for a 20 minutes length of time. You can, talk about what you're seeing, right? Trees. Oh, trees, big tree, little tree, green tree, red tree, like whatever they're interested in, right? Maybe they'll be pointing to something out the window and you can take advantage of that. And then you're talking lots about this one thing, very concentrated for a certain amount of time. One way, say you want your child to be able to say up. Maybe they hold their hands up for you to pick them up. So teaching up, this is a strategy we call target word. So you can pick maybe one word. If your child is speaking in phrases, maybe it's one phrase with a new vocabulary word embedded in it. If they're nonverbal, maybe you're doing a gesture. It could be a sign like more. It could be please. It could be up or down. But you want to target it as much as you can. Say, okay, for the next week, I'm going to target the word up with my child. So then you're going to just throughout the day, throughout all your daily routines, you're going to really focus on the word up. So maybe when they put their hands up, it's like up. Oh, you want up. Or maybe you're zipping, you're getting ready to go outside. You're going to make your zipper go up, right? And then maybe you're outside and you see an airplane up in the sky and you're like, up. Right? So you're just modeling that target word for a certain chunk of time until they start to understand it in different environments and different situations. So that helps them to incorporate that into their receptive vocabulary. And then once they understand that word, then they're more apt to say it. 'Cause receptive always comes first, and then expressive. Once they fully understand the concept or the word, then they're going to start to try and say it. And like I said, it could be depending on what language level your child is at, you can adapt it. So it might be gestures, it might be single words, it might be 2 words, it might be phrases. But yeah, and some parents or some families, there's certain words that are important to them, to specific families. Like it might be a pet name, it might be a sibling name, it might be a favorite restaurant you guys like to go to. It might be like, grandma, grandpa's name or nickname. So if there's something that's really important to you, you can target it and just target it all over the place, all day long, all over the place until they start to get it. And it might not verbally, it might not be perfect. It might be a version of what that word is. And then you kind of build on that to get it closer and closer to the actual word. But yeah, so lots of repetition is kind of when we think about us learning, when we go to school, we have to study things over and over again in order to remember them and learn them, right? So it's the same with language for our little guys. Yeah, let's see. And just remember that don't be too hard on yourself either, right? Because you can't do this all the time, every day, right? So you can pick your moments. And if it's like a really, valuable interaction, then a few moments is okay, right? That's good. A few moments here, a few moments there, where you're doing that really concentrated kind of language stimulation with them. The next one is imitation. I'm just seeing if there's any questions. We can always answer questions at the end if we have time. And like I said, if you're not comfortable with that in a larger group, then you can always ask questions to your school SLP, or I'd be more than happy to follow up with you as well. The next one is imitation. So imitation again. So when we think of repeat, that's how we learn things. How else do we learn things? Through imitation, being shown something, right? And when we can build those imitation skills, that's the beginning of learning new things, right? So when we think about imitating, kiddos need to know how to imitate actions before they're ever going to imitate sounds or words or phrases, right? So imitation is one of those foundational play skills that really is a prerequisite to language development. So when we talk about that, typically kiddos will learn to imitate things with objects first, right? So maybe like banging two blocks together or putting blocks on top of each other. So imitation skills with objects is kind of that first level of being able to imitate. And then the next one would be more body movements. So, and this is all before we start to learn to imitate sounds and words. So, so when you're playing with the kiddo, and you're on the floor, you're down at their level or they're up at your level, just like maybe they're sitting at the table and it's snack time and they're eating maybe their Cheerios or eating their snack or their pouches or whatever they're having for snack, and you're at the table with them and maybe you start to bang on the table with your hands, and then they start to bang on the table with their hands. So that would be like an early imitation of body movements. And then clapping, right? Maybe clapping. That's one that usually comes pretty early. And then you might see, like, if you have, a pre-K or a nursery song on TV and they're doing it like an action song, right? So head and shoulders, knees and toes. Then you might see them starting to imitate like the actions of touching their head and their shoulders and their knees and toes, right? So they're learning that imitation through those kind of activities. And even like say peekaboo, you bring the blanket down and then you put it back up, and then it doesn't take them too long to start to learn to kind of do that. Those are early on, right? So most of your kiddos would have already developed these imitation skills. But if they haven't, if they're not doing a lot of imitation, like even with the actions and the toys, then that's something that you could work on, because just knowing that that's really that foundational skill. Because before you're going to imitate sounds and words, you need to be able to imitate actions with objects and your body. After you're doing those like more gross motor things, like the clapping and the jumping in the head and shoulders, then comes imitation kind of your like oral motor imitation. So with your face, so like smiling, and maybe you're saying, oh, and they're looking at you and they're trying to get their lips rounded. Oh yeah, she's making those lips round, like, oh, right? So then they might be looking at you kind of like this and you'll see them trying to figure out how to do that lip rounding. And that's going to be trickier for some of our kids, right? Might be easy for some, but for others, it's tricky. So we're working on kind of those oral motor imitation skills. And then once they can do all that, then maybe the next thing that they tend to like to imitate are those environmental sounds. So things that sound fun, like they're way more fun to imitate than a word. It's like vroom and zoom and crash and boom and boom, like those kind of things. Or like animal sounds, meow and woof woof, like those kind of things. Those environmental sounds are fun to try and imitate, right? So that's kind of where we go after the actions, right? We go for those fun sounding things. So once I start to do some of those, even on like going down the slide, wee, right? Wee. So once I start to do some of those environmental sounds and imitation of those, then they're more apt to try to do some single words, like even just up and down and mom and dad and more, those kind of things. So single words. But let's see. Okay, sorry, got a little sidetracked there. But yeah, a good way to get them to imitate is by us imitating them. So some kids will just shut right down. Especially if you say this, say that, right? Because I had mentioned that before, that kind of puts them on the spot. So we don't want to do that because that's kind of pressure. Like they're like, oh, I'm not going to try that, right? So the modeling is much more effective, like just modeling for them so they can see what you're doing and then they can try if they feel comfortable or if they want to, right? But a great way to get them to imitate you is by you imitating them. So maybe they're running around making some like superhero sounds or actions or whatever, like, yeah, like let's get them. And you just doing the same thing that they're doing. So if they're like putting their arms up like that, you do that. Or if they're making funny sounds, like they're making raspberries with their lips, or they're making a funny noise or a funny face, like, or like, rah, rah, then you do the same thing. You'll feel silly doing it, but that's okay. You got to find your inner child. So you'll feel funny doing it. But if they do like stick their tongue up, then you stick your tongue up. If they make a funny face, like, I don't know, then you do that, right? Because that shows them that, oh, they're imitating me, so it's okay if I imitate them. So it kind of gives them permission to say, oh, okay, if mom can do this or if dad can do this, then I can do this too. And you'd be surprised at how effective that can be. And they think it's hilarious too. So that's just building that connection and that interaction with them, giving them lots of opportunities to interact with you. So yeah, but that's just knowing that imitation is really, unless they have imitation skills down, it's going to be hard to kind of build that language. So we really need to have that foundational play skill mastered or on its way to being mastered to get some of that language growth that we want to see. And the next one is taking turns. So again, when we talked about imitation being a foundational play skill, imitation of play before imitation of sounds and words, turn taking is the same thing. So turn taking, we want to be able to take turns in play, back and forth play, before they're ever going to take turns in talking, right? So think of that as being a foundational play skill as well. So children need to, be able to take those turns before they're going to try to take turns talking. So then just trying to increase throughout your day, trying to increase those opportunities for turn taking in play. So maybe it's hide and or maybe it's peekaboo. So you're doing it and then they're doing it. And that would be early on. I do realize that that's kind of a younger, but then some of our kiddos might still just be learning that too, right? But anything where you're taking turns in play, you might be building a tower. If your kiddo is a real builder and loves to play with blocks, then you might be like, but just making sure that we're demonstrating it and being really evident that we're taking turns. So, oh, my turn, your turn. They get to put one on, my turn. Because lots of kids at this age, sharing and taking turns is hard. That's what you learn at this pre-K age, right? So they're all learning that at this point. So they're not going to be great at it. And we can help kind of boost those skills by really making it evident. Okay, so turn taking. So that's a great opportunity or a great activity that lends itself to turn taking, right? My turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. But it could be anything. It could be rolling a ball back and forth, but just really highlighting that you're taking turns, right? So you can play it back and forth and not say anything, and that's great because you are sort of taking turns, right? But just highlight, oh, it's mommy's turn or it's daddy's turn. Now it's Johnny's turn, your turn. And so really making sure that they're aware of what you're doing in that activity. It could be if they have more language, it could really be that that like maybe an I spy game. I spy something that is red. And they may not have all those words, but they could look around and say green or see green or I see green. And then you have to find something. And then it's your turn. So then they have to listen. So anything, yeah, even puzzles like, oh, I'm going to put a piece in now. You're going to put a piece in now. My turn, your turn. So yeah, lots of activities anywhere that, and even board games, maybe board games, they might be at a point where you can play a simple board game, like, or when I say board games, like it could be something like, Pop-Up Pirate, or so they're just having to put a sword in. So it's not really a board game per se, but something where you have to take turns. And then it could also just be in everyday routines, right? Because I know you guys are all busy. As parents, we are busy, 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 especially when we have preschool age children. So it could be when you're out and about, outside playing in the backyard. Maybe, oh, we're gonna maybe there's snow on the ground, not today, maybe, but there's snow on the ground and you're making snowballs and you're making a snowman. Okay, my turn to put something on. I'm gonna put the arm in. Your turn. Okay, do you want to put his hat on? Your turn, put the hat on. So you take turns kind of dressing the snowman. It honestly could be anything. You could be in the bathtub and maybe you're dumping and filling the water. So my turn to dump, your turn to dump. Yeah, the key thing here is just making sure you're having that back and forth interaction and you're actually taking turns and making note of that for your child. Yeah, so that's, like I said, work it into everyday routine. So it's not a make work project. It's just something that you can easily slide into those things you're doing already. So it's not extra work for you. Yeah, so the next, one thing I do want to kind of draw your attention to is that just using positive language. So if you're trying to get your kiddo to kind of maybe instead of using negative language with them, like we just try and give them the positive language or the positive behavior that we would want to see, right? So instead of say they're a runner, right? And I mean, in school, this is easy because we're supposed to be using walking feet in school, right? So instead of saying no running, because then we're saying, how many times are we saying that over and over again, right? So they're getting that, we talked about repetition. So they're learning that language, no running. Well, that's okay if they understand no running, but let's give them the language that we do want to see. So instead of no running, we could say walking feet, show me walking feet, and maybe yelling. Instead of saying no yelling or stop yelling, we could say like quiet mouth or indoor voice if they knew what that was. Quiet mouth might be better. Quiet mouth, or like no hitting, maybe hands are for high fives, like just framing things in a positive way. Because if we're teaching language, we might as well teach that positive frame for those words. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of that first handout that's on the website. I realize we only have about 10 minutes left. So there's this handout for anyone new that came to the table here. And that outlines the 8 strategies that we went over. So building the relationship, get down to their level and follow their lead, give them lots of wait time, model the simple language for them so that it's not too much that they don't want to try and imitate it. And that plus one rule of adding one thing to their language. So if they're nonverbal, add a gesture. Or a sound or environmental sound. If they're single words, you're going to model 2 words. If they're at 2-word phrases, you're going to model 3 words, and on and on and on. The next one was repeat, repeat, repeat. So maybe you want to target a word and repeat it for that day or for 2 days or for that week across all different situations. So they learn that word and they start to use it. Or just even in a play interaction, lots of that repetition, cow in, cow out, cow up, cow down. Imitation, so imitate what they're doing so that they start to imitate what you're doing. And just remembering imitation is key for that language development. So imitate gross motor, fine motor, imitation before you're going to hear those sounds and those words. Offering, oh, we didn't do offer choices. Okay, offer choices. Sometimes we are going to go over that right now. Our students or our kiddos, sometimes they know what they want and they know what they need, but they just don't have the language to support them asking for it, right? So they might point to something, they might want something, but you just don't know what they want. So giving them choices. Okay, do you want a balloon or do you want coffee? So they have it right in front of them. So they have a way of answering it, right? So reducing frustration, but also giving them a turn in the interaction. So if they don't have the words, they don't have the language, they can point to the coffee, they can point to the, hopefully they're not drinking coffee, but they can point to the balloon, and then that gives them a way. And then you're able to react to their requests. So that's a big thing too, is that if they're pointing to the balloon, then they get the balloon and they're like, oh, I asked for that and I got what I wanted. So that they learn that communication is important. If I communicate, I can get things done, right? So that's another thing for just parents to remember, is that oftentimes maybe a kiddo might be just communicating by looking at you or by pointing at something, but it could be so subtle that you might miss it, right? So really kind of watching them and trying to pick up on those communication attempts on their part, because the quicker you can respond to a communication attempt, like I said, they get that, it starts to click that, oh, okay, I did something in order to get that. And it worked. So I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying to communicate. And that internal motivation will go a long, long way to helping them get there, right? So yeah, so sorry, as far as offering choices goes, yeah, instead of just saying, what do you want to drink? That's pretty open-ended and sometimes just too broad for them. So they do need you to bring it down to, would you like juice or milk? Right? And if you have, like, you can do that or that, and they could even point to your hand or say juice or milk if they're capable of doing that. Or they could say, you could model, I want juice, I want juice, I want milk. So maybe, and then if you model those phrases, then they can pick one of them and try and say it. So yeah, so just be careful of those broad-ended, open-ended questions, because oftentimes they might just not know, but oftentimes they might not have the language to tell you. They might know, but they just don't have that language to tell you. So giving them an option to take a turn in the conversation is important too. Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, so we're getting close to the end. There is the second handout on communication temptations, and I could do a whole session on communication temptations. I'm just going to let you know what it is. You guys can refer to the handout, but maybe this would be another session I'll expand on, because it is very interesting and it is a great language stimulation strategy that works so well. So basically what you're doing with the communication temptation is that you are setting up a situation. Some people like to call it sabotaging, but you're setting up a situation where your child has to communicate in order to get something. And so there's numerous ways that we can do this, but yeah, you're sabotaging the situation. So something's not working. So they have to either ask for help or they have to ask for more of something. An example would be, say, here, because I have the balloons here, this would be a hard to operate thing. Kids really have trouble blowing up balloons, right? So we could blow it up, right? And let the air out. And they're going to want, they like that sound for one thing, and they love balloons. So they're going to want you to blow more. So then we wait, because they can't do it on their own. Maybe the odd child can, but most kiddos cannot blow up a balloon. So we're going to wait until they have to ask. They might ask by pointing. They might ask by saying more with a gesture. They might say balloon. They might say blow. They might say blow up the balloon if they have that language, right? But yeah, so this is hard to operate. So they can't do it on their own. So they have to ask for help. Yeah, so that's an example of a communication temptation. I know I'm running out of time here. So that will be my next session, will be delving more into those communication temptations and lots of fun ideas of how to do that. So again, we do have about 4 minutes if there's any questions. You can put your question in the chat box there if you like, or you could raise a hand, I guess, if you have a question.